I was asked by you guys to bankrupt the Premier League. And so because I'm a kind, generous and giving guy, I've taken away all of their money. I've gone into the pre-game editor and I've set the bank balance of every single Premier League club to minus 500 million. I've also given them a £100 million per year stadium rental price to ensure that they are spending adequate amounts of money and keeping them bankrupt. I've also ensured that they've got a £750 million bank loan to repay at 10% interest per year as well. And to top it all off, I've removed every single sponsor for every single club. So on paper, it looks pretty decent to be fair, but Football Manager has a way of getting clubs out of debt pretty quickly. Looking through some of these clubs right now, you can see Arsenal's loan debt is nearly 2 billion, same for Aston Villa 1.75, 1.8 for Brentford. You get the idea essentially. But because the reputation of these clubs is so high, I reckon a lot of them are going to be out of issues within a couple of seasons. And so I've simulated a year into the future where Man City win the title ahead of Liverpool, Chelsea, Tottenham, West Ham, Man United and Leeds in 7th. But if we click on Man City, I mean their bank balance already is up to £330 million. The clubs are so good at getting themselves out of debt. Liverpool have got £37.5 million in their bank account, but they are back in positive figures. Chelsea about £17 million. Tottenham up to 172, they've done pretty well. West Ham still in the red, but only just £5 million in the red. In fact, the only club that look to be in deep trouble right now are Brighton with minus £105 million. So what is going on at these clubs? Well, I'm going to temporarily make myself manager of Manchester City. So as you can see in Man City's finances, there's a big spike here in November 2021, and that's listed as an other. Amount of income the club has received from various other sources. It sounds a bit dodgy, doesn't it? Essentially, this is just the board piling in an absolute ton of cash. And so you may say, Tom, why don't you just get rid of all the boards as well? You know, the Man City board, get rid of the Arsenal board, the Man United board, etc, etc. And yes, we could do that, but the game is programmed to bring in other board members who are as equally wealthy, essentially. It's all to do with the in-game reputation as well, and I didn't want to touch reputation because that's a completely different sort of part of the game which affects things in a completely different manner. This is purely financial. Interestingly though, you'll see sponsorship is at £306 million for the previous season, and obviously I've got rid of every single sponsor, but they've got back quite a lot of them. I mean, none of these look that lucrative until you get to the bottom, and you can see there's a random one-year sponsorship worth 63 million, and another one worth 161 million. And again, that's their great reputation that allows them to get great sponsorship deals such as this. No way. I think they may have paid off the £750 million of debt as... No way. Interestingly, I actually can't see it anywhere on the expenditure part of the finances. And that might just be because the board wrote it off completely. So let's go to the other end of the spectrum. We mentioned that Brighton were in trouble, so let's have a look at their finances. So as we can see, £105 million in the red. Things are not looking too good for them. If we look at the income tab, last season, 731 million, and that's another 500 million just pumped in by the board in other, which is interesting. Now actually, there is another possibility here. Now the possibility could be that the clubs went over £1 billion in debt, and the game hates it if a club goes plus or minus £1 billion. It's not really programmed to go above or below £1 billion. And in that situation, it may have just automatically corrected things, which is why we saw a £500 million injection. But that seems bizarre. Now, in terms of sponsorship, they got some sponsors back. As you can see, it's nowhere near the Man City level, but it's still a sizable chunk of sponsorship money. Now, I think there could be a big sell-off of players as well to try and help get the clubs back afloat. But I've just looked at the transfers, and the biggest transfer out of the Premier League was Marcus Rashford to PSG for £32.5 million. Not a whole lot, and a lot of clubs are bringing players in. Now, Leicester did sell a few for £27 and £26 million to Barca and PSG, but a lot of clubs are still bringing players in. So we've seen the short-term effects, and the short-term effects are not a whole lot really. What I want to do now though is have a look at some of the long-term effects over 10 years. And so we're now in 2031, 10 years on from when I bankrupt the clubs. And the Premier League actually does look a little bit different. Congratulations to Burton Albion on achieving 11 points, but I mean they are in the Premier League, which is a pretty decent going. Sunderland back up there as well. and everyone else looked actually pretty familiar. I just looked at the bottom and saw Sunderland and Burton Albion and thought, wow, everyone else is pretty familiar. That suggests that getting rid of all their money has not really had much of an impact on these clubs. A lot of them haven't been relegated down the leagues a lot. I've actually gone through all the leagues to see if any of the teams did get relegated, and the lowest ranked team I could find who started off in the Premier League was Brighton, who are 11th in the Championship. I mean, they've survived it well. And so I've made myself the Brighton manager again. I've looked at their finances, and there's nothing that's like really particular, irregular or anything like that. There's some big injection of the cash every now and again, but nothing like the £500 million that we saw right at the start. Expenditure is as you would expect for most clubs, big spikes in transfer windows, and that's about it. I will say maybe salaries have been affected a little bit, because the salaries per year are a lot lower than they were right at the start and what you'd normally expect from a Premier League club. Like Man United, let's have a look at them for example. Their top earner is Jadon Sancho on £245,000 a week, with a few players on over £100,000, but for the most part, I would say that they have reduced their wage bill, which is maybe part of the bankruptcy thing. This says it a bit better maybe. The average wage at the club is £41,000 per week. If I go right back to the start of this experiment in 2021, the average salary per week was £56,000. At Man City right at the start of the game, it's £43,000 per week. And then jumping back to 2031, it's £57,000 a week. Right, well that's not proved anything, has it, at all? So I think what we've learned here today is that the game hates bankrupting clubs. Like, we've seen the game has put mechanisms in place to stop clubs being bankrupt, essentially. Very, very quickly, these clubs got back to fighting fit finances and have done really well. There are other ways to potentially limit clubs as well, such as salary caps, and that's something that we might do in a future video next week, for example, if you guys want to see it. But I'd also love to know down in the comment section what you guys think we should be doing to try and limit some clubs, and what hypothesis you have might work in Football Manager to properly bankrupt clubs and see the end of British dominance in football. So once you left a comment, drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. There are some more videos on the side of the screen right now for you to go and check out, and they're very good, I think, personally, because I made them, so have a look at them. See you soon. Goodbye.